the true and the beautiful, with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the Pure Strong Heart of St. Joseph. Today is Testimony Tuesday, where we bring you real, live, first-hand testimonial accounts of the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. Our guest today is Mike McQuade. He is a Catholic husband and father of 11, an Air Force fighter pilot who flew F-16s for 20 years, now flies 777s as an airline pilot, and is one of the founders of Our Lady of the Rosary Orphanage and Primary School in Uganda, Our Lady of the Rosary Uganda.com. I actually met Mike this past weekend when my family and I went over to Ave Maria, Florida to run in a 5K, and my wife spotted a cute puppy. We've been talking about getting a dog as a family for some time now, and so she sees this cute puppy. There's more available. We trace it back to Mike and his family on their website, supercutedoodles.com. And now we've got a new mini golden doodle named Bernadette, Day for short. It was the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes when we got her. And it was a great blessing to meet Mike, hear a little of his story. And by God's providence, it worked out to have him with us today to share some more with all of us. Mike McQuade, thank you for being with us. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Jim. Thanks a lot for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for being with us. And we always begin at the beginning. We'll start with childhood. What was your early life like, your family, the culture that you grew up in?
Well, I was raised in, started out in Maryland, and then we moved to South Mississippi, to the back half of my grandfather's farm. He had a dairy farm, and we built a house kind of without neighbors, and we're very much secluded from other people, but in a very good way. Anyway, so we moved to South Mississippi and lived very closely with my grandparents. They lived on the front 40, and we kind of lived in the back through the woods. And we were at their house all the time. My grandmother was a devout, very consistent Catholic woman, and had two brothers. We were all raised in the church. The three of us were altar boys. My mom played the organ. My dad was a lector. And every time we'd go up to my grandmother, she actually sponsored all 26 nuns at the convent that was part of the school where she worked. The nuns all came from Ireland. So she was their sponsor for citizenship. So, of course, they came out to the house very consistently, pretty much every weekend. And that's where I was raised. We'd go up to grandma's, and my aunts and uncles and cousins, and everybody would converge. We were all Catholic. We'd go to mass every week, CCD, the whole 9 yards, and had a great upbringing. We were probably I guess upper middle class. We didn't want for anything that I knew about, but we also didn't have everything, and didn't know that we were missing anything at all. I brought up the secluded part because we lived in a mobile home while we built a house kind of in the woods, which meant we could have BB guns and four-wheelers and fireworks, bottle rocket wars. I don't think my mother still knows about that one. And we got to do a lot of fun stuff growing up. I don't have any regrets about my childhood, looking back at it. And should I just go on about the rest of the
Sure, yeah. Tell us
progression of my life.
How did it go growing up from there? What kind of schooling did you have, or how did things go with your faith going forward? We always try to follow the line of sacramental grace as well. So I imagine you would have been baptized as an infant. Probably first Holy Communion, first penance, first confession around second grade or something, maybe confirmation at some point. I don't know. What else can you share as you grow a little older?
Everything was absolutely by the book. Got all my sacraments very much on time. I actually started doing some of the readings at Mass probably in maybe the 9th grade or the 10th grade. Finished up all through CCD, and faith formation. I don't think they call it CCD anymore, but and then we went off to college. My two brothers and I, we all left at the same time. We were right in a row. 12th, 11th, and 10th grade. All three of us went to college at the same time. I went to the University of Mississippi, and upon getting there, it wasn't that I had a very intentional reason for not going to Mass, but it also wasn't, I didn't have a very intentional reason for going to Mass. I was later convicted that it was probably my parents' religion that I was a part of. And it was very much a cultural thing. We'd go up to grandma's, all the nuns would be there. A lot of times the priests would come over, and there wasn't anything wrong or bad or anything that happened being a part of that whatsoever. It was a great place to grow up. But when I got to college, I was busy, and I let other things fill that space, where previously I had gone to Mass. So I became very inconsistent with going to Mass. And I'd say later I looked back and was able to put it into words that it was more, like I said, my parents' religion versus my faith, my resolve. And praise God for the family that I was brought up in. And I think, I never did anything. I kept the commandments. Of course I did things, but I generally kept, I was a sinner saved by God's grace. Let me get that out there. But I was inclined to not do inappropriate things that we all don't want our children to do, more so because I didn't want my father to find out that I had done these things, versus the fact that I'd be sinning against a holy God. I guess that's how I can encapsulate that. And so when I got to college, I still didn't, I still did all the same things appropriately that we want our children to do and not do. But it wasn't that my dad was there to know whether I was going to church or not. So I stopped going. Occasionally we would go. Of course, I'd go when we went home on a weekend or over Christmas break or whatever. But it wasn't necessarily super important to me to be at Mass all the time. So I met my wife at college, and we actually went sometimes on Sunday nights to Mass because they had a $1 spaghetti dinner. And that was probably the impetus that got us to Mass the most frequently, I'm sad to say. So I met Jennifer, and we graduated. I went to college on an Air Force scholarship and thought, if I have to be in the Air Force when I graduate college, I hear they have airplanes, let me see what that's all about. So I converted over to a pilot scholarship. I passed some tests and did okay on them. And then after graduation, Jennifer and I got married exactly 1 week after the graduation ceremony. 7 days later, we got married, and then we waited to enter the Air Force and went to pilot training. It's a funny story that I'm not too proud of, but we started pilot training in February, and it was Easter before we decided we should probably go to church. And she was raised Anglican, Episcopalian Anglican, the conservative Episcopalian, and I went to church all the time. But together now, collectively, we're not necessarily church people. So Easter morning, we go out Saturday night and find a church that we're going to go to. Easter morning, we get up, we get there late, and we were going to go to an Episcopalian church, and it shared a parking lot with another church that we were unaware of. So we get out of our car, and we're walking into the service, and just went with the crowd, and actually walked into the wrong church, and didn't realize it till the guy said, "Welcome to Agape United Methodist Church, and Happy Easter."
I think we lost Mike's audio for a minute there. We'll see if we can get Mike's audio restored and back with us right away. But fascinating story thus far here with Mike McQuade. And yeah, when he gets back, I definitely want to ask him if there was a sense at all in the upbringing that Jesus was real, the Catholic Church was real, and that, this love, this great love of God for us was real. I'm guessing it's like most of us, very relatable that many of us, we might grow up Catholic. We might be sort of soaking in the faith in many ways, and yet somehow we may miss the most essential aspects of the truth of the gospel that is right there. That but for those essential truths of the gospel, we wouldn't have the Mass, we wouldn't have the church, we wouldn't have baptism, we wouldn't have the sacraments, the teaching office of the church, all of the things that we are so blessed by in this Catholic faith, and that Jesus died to give us, that essential truth, that is that Jesus is real, he is truly God, he came for us out of his great love for us, the second person of the Holy Trinity, taking on flesh, lived and was rejected, suffered and died out of love of us, rose from the dead, offers us a way back, pours out his Holy Spirit upon us to fill us with his life if only we say yes to this great offer that is ours in following him. Come and follow me. Take up your cross and come follow me. Come and let me give you the drink that will be the everlasting water that will quench your thirst, right? I want to give you the life that you're made for. This is the offer of Jesus, who is real, who loves us with everything, loves you with everything. This is why we are Catholic, and we want to live the faith with all that we are. We're going to be right back with Mike McQuade. Stay tuned.
Keep up to date with the shows we bring you each day on the Station of the Cross by viewing our programming grid on our website, thestationofthecross.com, and on our iCatholic radio app. Just click the menu icon in the top left portion of our app and select the link to our programming grid. That's at thestationofthecross.com and on our free iCatholic radio app for Android and Apple mobile devices.
Unbelievers often reject religion because it sometimes causes conflict. They'll say, science will fly you to the moon, religion will fly you into buildings. Is this a rational basis for rejecting religion? The answer is no, and here's the reason. First, just because something causes conflict doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. For example, many wars have been fought over land. Does this mean we should do away with the right to private property? I don't think so. Second, the objection doesn't specify which religions cause war. It may belong to the essence of some religions to spread its message by the sword, and these we should reject, but it doesn't belong to all religions. So, to the question, should I reject religion because it causes conflict? The answer is no. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
By 10 weeks, stimulation of the upper eyelid causes a downward rolling of the eye. The fetus yawns and often opens and closes the mouth. All organs and extremities found in adults are present in the 10-week unborn baby. Human life is sacred. Think about it. coalitionforlife.com.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today on this Testimony Tuesday, Mike McQuade. He is a Catholic husband and father of 11, also one of the founders of Our Lady of the Rosary Orphanage and Primary School in Uganda, Our Lady of the Rosary, Uganda.com. We'll hear more about that a bit later in the show. But Mike, I've got to ask, as we lost you a little bit at the end there, great to have you back here with us, and your story is so compelling. I know that you're getting into this part where really you left the Catholic faith for a while, end up finding your way back by God's grace, but But in between there, it seems like something that was maybe missing in the beginning, this real relationship, this real understanding that Jesus is real and that he loves you and that you're going to respond in this personal love to him that I don't want to put words in your mouth. So tell me how you view it looking back. Was that just something that didn't, for some reason, just register with you growing up for whatever reason, but then stepping away from the Catholic faith, somehow stripping things away, that became revealed, and then you enter into this relationship with our Lord Jesus where he eventually leads you back into the Catholic faith? How did that all go down?
Yeah, that's very specifically. Can you guys hear me okay?
You sound great.
It was okay. Sorry, I can't hear my own audio. That's very specifically how it went down. So I was saying that my wife and I got married. We wound up going to Korea, and we had our first child over there. Ryland's now 30. But we realized that just with something that was in me, maybe what was demonstrated to me my entire life, we realized, hey, we needed to be in church because that's what you do when you have kids. And so we started attending a Protestant service, came back to the States, found a Protestant service, and then started bouncing around between churches, and then actually responded in faith to an altar call at a kind of a revival Protestant service, where we actually gave our lives to Jesus. We made some pretty significant changes in the things we listened to, the things we watched, the way we spent our time, what we read, and how we intentionally were raising our children. And that time of our lives we were totally on fire for Jesus. We were completely all in, if you want to say it that way, filled with the Spirit. In Protestant churches, but nonetheless, totally, I'm sure we all know, totally fired up, zealous for the Lord Protestants as well. They're not all in the Catholic Church, and so that started a 25-year journey actually for us, where we got back to the States, and remarkably, every time you move in the Air Force, it's to a different geographical location. And for me, that happened every 2 to 3 years. We've moved 19 times total, full up, load everything that you own in a truck, and move to a different part of the country with everything, your kids, your dogs, all the furniture and everything. And so each time you move, you have to find another church. And sometimes it was easy to leave. We left one church just as they were going off to the National Convention to affirm some things that we did not agree with whatsoever. And other times we're a little bit sad to leave, but it was also God's timing where it was appropriate for us to leave because he had more things to learn, more things for us to learn. So we started at kind of a mega church seeker service type of a gathering, a Protestant church. The pastor had a PhD in church growth and was all about growing the church. He saw it as a business, and the business was saving souls. And we were excited to be a part of that, but there was still something missing. So our next church, we found something, and then the next church, we found something more. And each time we would find something, it would be more conservative, more reformed, if that means anything to a lot of y'all. And ultimately, at the end of the journey, we just kept getting closer and closer and closer to the Catholic Church. We started out mega church seeker service, big kind of a rock band, drinking your coffee kind of a thing. And we finished up at the other end of the Protestant spectrum at a very reformed, covenantal, super conservative, everybody homeschooled and had like 9,000 kids each, Reformed Presbyterian work. In fact, we actually started the church ourselves because we wanted to go deeper and be more holy or more appropriately aligned with how God wanted us to worship. And I, quite honestly, aside from the crucifix not being anywhere present, people would probably come and go, you guys are Catholic, right? Because their pastor wore a robe, he had a collar on 24/7. We knelt to pray. Most of us knelt to pray. Some of us didn't want to kneel to pray because they thought it looked too Catholic, which I never could get my mind around. as things progressed, of course, my wife Jennifer's 2 years ahead of me in everything that includes or involves intelligence. So she's reading all these books 2 years ahead of me. And basically, I think she had reverted to Catholicism significantly earlier than I did, but was at the same time afraid that we would lose everything that we had. We had our homeschool group. We had more than 4 kids by then. I think we had 6 or 7 kids by the time we got to Lakeland and started the church. And we had all of our friends, and they were all Protestant. Most of them were in the church with us that we had started. And I was an elder. At times I preached, and we really thought we were doing the right thing. But then there was still something missing. And as we continued to go deeper and deeper and deeper, we were just continuing to rediscover the Catholic Church. And there were several stoppers that kept me from being Catholic, like purgatory, praying to the saints, going to confession with a priest, and of course the Eucharist. I actually, as a Protestant, I served communion, and my hands aren't holy, but I actually had the bread, and we had a little bit of wine and said, "The peace of Christ, this is the cup of peace." And we intentionally believed that there was it was a means of grace, as the everyone in that church still does. Of course, I confessed that, and as we started looking into the reasons that we weren't Catholic, I had a great idea. I said, why don't I read what the Catholics believe in something that was written by a Catholic? So that list, the purgatory, confession, praying to the saints, and the Eucharist. So I read about the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I think it's paragraph 1030 and 1031 about purgatory. It's about this long. There's about 35 words in it. And I've read volumes of just huge, ginormous books that are written by Protestants about purgatory, about what all those Catholics believe. And we don't. So that was an easy thing to check off. The next one was confession and praying to the saints and our Blessed Mother. And then the biggest one for me, though, was the Eucharist. And Scott Hahn does a great job in the Lamb's Supper. My wife gave me that after I'd gotten through the rest of everything. She said, if you want to go all the way, read this. And she woke up the next morning. I stayed up and read the whole thing. And, he says in that book, if in the Bread of Life discourse in John 6, if Jesus said what he meant and he meant what he said, as thousands of people are leaving him, don't you think he would have corrected him if they got him wrong? But he didn't. So he must have said what he meant and meant what he said. And he is the Eucharist. And no one else has that but the Catholic Church. And my wife said, "What do you think?" I said, I think we're Catholic. And she like Scott Hahn, I don't know if you've heard his testimony, but she was like, "Oh, we're going to lose everything we have." And sadly we did, and I began to see the negativity that can be in circles, the anti-Catholic, and we were never even remotely anti-Catholic. In Germany, way early on, my brother and his wife, whom we just spent time with this last week, we love them dearly. They have been consistently Catholic from cradle till now. They were Catholic, and we would have them to our homeschooling groups that were all Protestants. And some of the people were just really mean and uncharitable, really in a sad way. They just lacked mercy and lacked a lot of things as they were trying to talk about faith differences. And true to form, when we got to the Starbucks that night and I had the other elders and said, "Hey, I got something to share with you. I'm becoming convinced of Catholicism." That was the last civil conversation we ever had with them. And these are people that we sweat and worked, super hard with for 5 or 6 years. But now we've drunk the Kool-Aid, or whatever they want to call it. We've gone over to the other side, and I think if we had gone to a different flavor of Protestantism, they would have been fine with that. But because we were going back to the Catholic Church, and for me, it was a revert and Jennifer was a convert. I think that was the most offensive thing to them. And it was really sad, and the other we've learned several things along the way, but one of the things I've learned is if you're concerned about somebody's soul, you might want to call them and ask them, say, hey, what's this move you're making? What are you reading? Help me understand what you're thinking. Instead of just hopping on the bus, it's about to drive over the family. So we did learn quite a few things in that 25 years because we went to a whole myriad. We went to Southern Baptist. We went to, I don't need to start naming denominations, but we went through the entire Reformation staircase that we slid down. And we did learn a ton of stuff. We learned that hospitality is a real thing. And we're hoping that we can kind of bring that into some of the Catholic churches that we've been a part of. We're very intentional about talking to people, maybe not before Mass in the pews, but if you see them outside as you walk into church, you can greet them and shake your hands. And then, of course, everybody likes to stand outside afterwards and talk. But that's a very important part of who we are. That's a charitable way to welcome new people. If I see somebody at Mass that I haven't seen before, and there might be 600 people there in Ave Maria with the college, then I'll go up and shake their hand and say, hey, is this your first time here? Welcome to Ave. This is a great place to raise kids, great place to live. Is there anything I can do for you? And we've had all kinds of not mixed results, really good responses from just trying to meet people and be hospitable and love on them. Maybe that'll make a difference whether they come back or whether they decide to move here or whether they decide to join the Catholic Church. We have no idea where they're coming from. We learned that you can learn a lot about a family by meeting their kids and watching them interact with their. Well, Jim, I told you that at our house when you came to pick the puppy up. Jim has, for all you listeners, Jim has like the world's greatest kids, and they all came in, and every time I started talking, they would all stop and look at me and be very polite and respectful, and the way he interacted with his wife and the way the kids would look at him and respond to Jim's lead. You can tell that's a solid family. We learned that in our progression as we went through different churches. You could find out where the people were very intentional and also where they are not. And so that was a really good lesson to learn. As we started making plans to expand our family, we realized because of our history, the way we wanted to expand it and what we wanted to do once it was larger. So we can talk about that maybe after the break.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mike McQuade is with us, and when we come back, I want to hear a little bit more about when they came back into the church on Pentecost. Have Mike share a little bit on that, and then lead us into this important aspect of adoption, and hear the good that he wants to share with us there today. I think he's got a lot to share with us on that topic. And also, if you want to check out the business that he and his family do with the dogs, supercutedoodles.com. We're also going to get into the orphanage as well later in the show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent from your diocese, our apostolate is listener supported. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. The Station of the Cross thanks our supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
The Station of the Cross is listener-funded, and we value your ongoing generosity. In this fast-paced world, it's easy to let your recurring donation slip due to something like a new address or a card number change. If you suspect that we might not have your up-to-date donor information, you can check with us during regular business hours at 1-877-888-6279 extension 104 or anytime online at thestationofthecross.com.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
I'm a widower, parent of 3 almost adults, and listen to you guys around the clock. Father McTigg, Society of Jesus, he's wonderful. Mother Miriam, of course, the Divine Office, and many other great things that Station of the Cross does. So thanks very much for your great work.
I had a friend at work email me and tell me about the Station of the Cross a couple months after it started, and I was so excited. I tuned into it, and I found that I love the Catholic station.
If you've been blessed blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112, then share your testimonial with us.
Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Mike McQuade, sharing some of his personal testimony with us today. Mike is a Catholic husband and father of 11, also one of the founders of Our Lady of the Rosary Orphanage and Primary School in Uganda, Our Lady of the Rosary, Uganda.com. Mike, share with us a little bit about that day, that Holy Mass where you return to the Catholic Church with your wife and children on Pentecost 8 years ago. What was that like? Anything you want to share with us from there, and then lead us into adoption?
Yeah, sure thing. This is what it looked like 8 years ago as we rejoined the Catholic Church on Pentecost. Like you said, it was a beautiful, spirit-filled day. We actually had, I actually wrote it down because I can't keep track. We had six. Yeah, there were 6 First Holy Communions and 3 confirmations among the McQuade family that day. And it was just a beautiful day, big celebration. My Catholic brother, Robert, and his wife, Margaret, came down to celebrate with us. They're the ones that had been in Germany 12 years earlier or something like that, 6 years earlier. And it was just a joyous event. And I jokingly say our previous church said that they kicked us out of the church, but I think they actually kicked us back into church. And so we rejoined the Catholic Church that day and haven't looked back ever since. I realized that this is where the Eucharist is. What more can you say? We have adoration. We live in Ave Maria, Florida, which is a beautiful little college towns. There's maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people here, plus the college. Got a great big church right in the center. It's the tallest building you can see for miles around, right across the street from the college. And part of the college, they have a chapel where there's 24/7 adoration, and it's a beautiful thing. So let me jump forward now and maybe talk about my family a little bit. I know you were real excited to hear about that as we spoke on Saturday. But Jennifer and I have been married for 34 years. We have 4 biological boys that they got with us first, and then we adopted 7 from China. We have 3 girls and 4 boys. They're aged 30 down to 5. And we've been homeschooling all 11 of them for 27 years. I was going to do the math and see how many collective homeschool years my wife has put in, but it might be in the thousands. And I used to say that I married the right woman. But what I think would be more appropriate to say is the woman that I married became the right woman with God's help, by God's grace. She's everything to these kids. She's everything to me. And it's really a blessing to be around her and to just watch the resolve with which she operates. We're going through some medical challenges with a couple of our kids, and she's the mama bear that stays up from midnight to 3 or 4 a.m. every night looking for different things that maybe the doctors haven't figured out yet to make our lives and theirs better. So now, like I said, we live in Ave Maria, Florida. We have 2 sons that are serving daily mass. The 7 of the kids are still here with us in the house. And the way that our family grew, we had the 4 boys. We were over in Germany, and we really like having the babies. We really like having little kids. And our youngest biological son I think he was turning 5 or 6. And we just had never gotten pregnant again. And it was pretty strange because the first 4 times we kind of looked at each other and said, "Are you ready to have a baby?" And like 27 minutes later, she was pregnant, and it was very easy for us to conceive. All that process went very well for us, and then she just never got pregnant again, and we don't know what happened. But by God's grace, He opened the door to adoption. And there's so many. I could probably talk for 16 hours about the whole process, because there's so many little God stories just sprinkled all throughout. We were talking a little bit about this yesterday. I wonder if these things happen to everybody, and we just need to pay attention more. But some of the stories I love to tell. As we are trying to figure out how to expand our family, we're living over in Germany. I'm furloughed from my airline job, and we're full-time in the military again at Ramstein Air Base. And we're trying to figure out how to adopt as expatriates in Germany, living on an Air Force base, but without really any status to get to and from the States. So Jennifer, unbeknownst to me, prayed one night and said, God, if you want us to adopt, we can't figure it out. We don't know what we're doing. We can't find anybody that'll help us. You got to make it really clear and obvious to us. So the next day, still Protestant, we go to a Baptist church off base. It was an English-speaking church. And there's this a family that came out, and they all looked the same. They were all Caucasian. The parents looked like the kids, and the kids looked like each other, and all that stuff. And we all sat down outside the church. There was a school there, so it was me and my wife and our 4 kids, and them and their 3 kids. And we played. I'm running around with the kids, and this woman turns to Jennifer and says, "Yeah, these 3 are from Poland. They're our children. We adopted them." And she just proceeded to talk to Jennifer for like the next hour about how her kids are adopted from Poland. And then after the hour, she's like, "I'm not sure why I just told you all that. Most of the people in our church don't even know that we adopted these guys." And so, of course, Jennifer gets in the van and just completely loses it and says, "We're adopted," and that was the joyful start that Drew and Kathy became very good friends of ours. We looked into Poland. We looked into a lot of places in Eastern Europe, and they wouldn't give us any kids because we already had 4. So, of course, it'd be better to stay in a Polish orphanage than, visit the McQuade house. So we had to look other places, and China seemed like a super, super good fit for us. So we got in line. We started doing the home studies and figured out how to do it over in Europe with an American home study group and all that stuff. And we kind of had to lead them through the process. And so we got in line, we turned all our paperwork in, and the Olympics were about to happen in China. So everything started to get longer and longer and longer for getting a child. And we weren't in any big hurry. We already had 4. It wasn't like we were pining on our first child, but we wanted to move on with it. So we got out of line and got in the special needs line. And our home study said 1 child under 3 with very particular special needs. So we got our first daughter. She was diagnosed with a ventral septal defect, very small. And we went and adopted her almost immediately and brought her back to Germany, and they ultrasounded her, and she was perfect. No problems with her heart. It had either fixed itself, or we think maybe the intake doctor for the orphanage was a Christian, and he was labeling them some kind of internal problem, get them on the special needs list and get them out of China quicker. And it worked perfectly. So fast forward a year and a half later, we decided to go back and get her a little sister. And that's when our second baby girl came to us. Her special need was she had an extra digit on one of her hands. And by this time we had moved back to the States, and we needed to get that taken care of. And the beautiful thing about all these little God stories is we happened to move to Lakeland, and there was a Shriners Hospital in Tampa, like 45 minutes away. And one of the top 5 pediatric bone surgeons, I can't think of the podiatrist. Anyway, the top 5 bone surgeons for pediatrics in the country volunteers every other Thursday at Shriners. So we went there. Everything was totally free. She got excellent care. I can't, when I look at her hands, I can't tell which hand it was. And that's just another example of God's timing and grace in our lives, because that could have been a really big problem, and it wasn't. It was outpatient surgery. We drove over, got it done. She had a cast on for 2 months and clunked herself in the head a lot because she sucked on those fingers when she slept. That's how our life has been. It just keeps unfolding in a beautiful, beautiful way. And we learned a lot. For the first adoption, for Grace, we purchased probably $300 or $400, $500 worth of music and books. There's a lot of books you can get in Chinese, like the kids' story books from churches that are actually printed in China. So we carried all that stuff over with us. When we went on the second trip, we brought all of the kids with us. So they all had 2 suitcases each. So we started calling the publishers and asking them if they would donate. And I think we probably had about, 1,000 copies of different things. A lot of them were slimline Bibles. We learned a lot about the generosity of people and corporations in that. So we actually had to go through Ken Sarita with Water is Life in Oklahoma to get all the Bibles, because there's no way we could carry everything. So he actually shipped everything over with us to be handed out in China. Time goes on, and there's another great story. We went to go get Liam, and we said, you know what? Why limit ourselves? Why don't we get the home study with any special need? Because you have to say in the home study what you think you're capable of handling or accommodating or whatever you want to say. So we said, let's just open it up to any special need. Why limit it to one child? We'll say 2 children in case there's a sibling over there or something when we get there. And let's say 14 and under. So we find Liam, who's a 20-month-old, we're going to go and adopt, and we're getting ready to travel. And somebody comes back from China and says, hey, there's a 13-year-old. And when you hit 14, you get kicked out of the orphanage because you age out and you can no longer be adopted. So we heard about this 13-year-old that was going to age out from a family that had met him when they were picking up their baby. And of course, my wife's beautiful heart comes to me and says, hey, I think we're supposed to adopt this young man. I said, absolutely not. He's 14 almost. We don't know him. We have no idea where he's been or what he's done or anything like that. And she said, well, it's all lined up. We have the home study. We're ready to travel. We have everything. Everything's lined up. It's definitely us. And I said, I'm sure it's not us. And she said that trick thing that was going to, turn the tide. She said, well, why don't you pray about it? So of course I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to pray about it. And actually, I did pray about it, and now we have our next wonderful son. But the God story in that to continue was we had all those things lined up, but we needed to come up with $17,000 more because they don't give you a break from a lot of the places you pay money. And so I said, we can do everything else, sweetie, but we got to come up with the $17,000. So she found a place called the Both Hands Foundation. And in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 27, it talks about true religion being taking care of the widows and orphans in their affliction. So the fundraiser was we fix a widow's house, all the money that's donated, kind of like when you play golf to fix breast cancer, people donate money for you to do something. And then that money goes to the cause. Well, we were doing something that was fixing a widow's house, and all the money was going to go to the adoption. Beautiful. It's Both Hands Foundation, if you want to look that up. And we raised, I told you we needed $17,000. We raised exactly $17,000 to the penny. And the crazy thing is, we're all loaded up, ready to go to China. And Monday I stopped the mail. Tuesday we didn't get any mail, and we were $3,000 short. I was just going to put it on a credit card or something. We'll figure it out. Wednesday morning on the way to the Tampa airport at dark 30, I looked in the mailbox one more time, and there was an envelope with a check with $3,000 in it. So how great is that? And, I'm glad it was $17,000, because if it had been $2,500 or $4,000, I could have called my mom. I could have called my brothers. I could have called my wife's parents or somebody, and we could have gotten it done. But because it was such an insurmountable amount, we actually needed to include God, and guess what? He came through perfectly to the penny.
Amazing. Mike McQuade
Isn't that amazing?
is with us. Yes, yeah. Praise God. Absolutely incredible. And on holy ground here today with Mike McQuade sharing some of his personal testimony with us. When we get back, we're going to get into also the good work that Mike and his family have done with Our Lady of the Rosary Orphanage and Primary School in Uganda, Our Lady of the Rosary Uganda.com. And I'll also kick off the next segment asking him one last question about adoption, because I'm sure that there are some out there, maybe it's you listening right now, and maybe you'd like a little encouragement or some advice on adoption. I'll ask Mike when we get back as well, so stay tuned.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. Isabel Von Spruce, leader of the UK March for Life, was arrested for thinking or praying silently in violation of Birmingham, England statutes. Despite bail and dropped charges, she was forbidden to publicly pray anywhere, among other restrictions. Alliance Defending Freedom attorneys are taking her case to court Thursday, hoping to reverse charges and set national precedents as Parliament is considering implementing similar laws nationally. Attorneys for a group of pro-life doctors and medical groups contend in federal court that the FDA used a carefully crafted ruse to approve chemical abortion pills in the U.S. If pregnancy is an illness and pills kill the illness, abortion drugs would be seen as having a meaningful therapeutic benefit. ADF attorneys filed the brief in federal court Friday. In the face of abortion industry safety claims, numerous articles at Life News show documented danger of chemical abortion pills. This is Life News Radio. 3 New Mexico Catholic bishops and other leaders say they shudder to think what ritualized abortions are all about. But a religious group from Massachusetts that celebrates diabolical forces wants to offer free abortions in New Mexico. The bishops say it is time for Christians to pray and act to end abortion. He is famous, but not for these things: a return to practicing his Catholic Christian faith, marriage, becoming a father, and a member of the Catholic men's group Knights of Columbus, an honest and open opponent of the practice of abortion. Those things make him good. What makes Harrison Butker famous is he scored the final winning points of Super Bowl 57 Sunday. Fame is nice. Good is awesome. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Mike McQuade, Catholic husband, father of 11, one of the founders of Our Lady of the Rosary Orphanage and Primary School in Uganda, Our Lady of the Rosary Uganda.com. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but real quick, Mike, for those that are listening and families that want to step forward, open themselves up and begin the discernment and the process of possibly an adoption journey, stepping forward in all of that. I know for my family over the past year, we've kind of been easing into that, did the home study and all of that over the past year, and been kind of prayerful and open. But man, there's a lot to it. It's quite an adventure. Any encouragement, any advice to families that maybe are just getting started in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say collectively pray together about it, and make sure you're both comfortable with the prospect of adding a child that hasn't been with you, and if you're not, pray about it a little more, because that's where I was. I wasn't extremely comfortable as much as Jennifer was. I said originally, she's quite a while ago, she's 2 years ahead of me in everything, and that held true to form with this and with going the special needs route. And what we found out was we went the special. All 7 of them are special needs, but the 7 of the adopted children, but they're insignificantly. Most of them got back to the States with us, and they're already completely corrected, and there's no issues whatsoever. So I wouldn't even let that be a potential stopper. Some good adoption agencies are CCAI. This is probably the largest one. Gladney, Gladney, and then Children's Hope International. I think it's CHI. That's in St. Louis. We've used them in the past. And if you're wondering if this is a good fit for your family, we at one time had all the kids. I thought it was going to be an altar call. We had all the kids close their eyes and bow their heads, and then we said, "Who wants to go and adopt a child that would interrupt the birth order? Who wants to get an older boy?" And every kid's eyes, they're all closed and every hand went up in the room. And so they were all excited about it. And then we went back 3 years later and got another 14-year-old that was the roommate of the first 14-year-old that we adopted. And he was saying, "Dad, we have to go back and get him. He's the only older boy that still has all of his brain works perfectly. He's smart. He shouldn't be in the orphanage, and he needs to be adopted." And so then he tells me, "I know that money was a problem for getting me. You can have all of my money, but let's go get them." And so we did. So now they're not just best friends. They used to be roommates in the orphanage. So now they're not best friends. They're not just best friends. They're brothers. And we got another son out of that deal too, which is just a fantastic. So I wouldn't be afraid. God works things out. Each time we non-revved over with my commercial pilot job with my company, we got there. And one day we got there a day before the deadline for being able to adopt him. It was the fundraiser one where we adopted the first older child. And, we didn't even have the paperwork done. We had the paperwork done for the younger boy, but when we added the older boy, his numbers, his immigration numbers and paperwork never came back. So we just put the younger boy's information on both forms. We went to China. We got there a day before his 14th birthday. They gave us both sons. We traveled around China doing all this stuff. And as we're getting to the American embassy to check out of China, the guy says, "Hey, there's a problem with the older son's visa." And we knew the problem was caused by us because we put the wrong numbers on because we didn't have the right numbers. So then he comes back and everything's all squared away. And he's like, "When did you guys get here?" And we said, "Oh, the 30th of June, right before his birthday." And we're kind of giving the nod to the guy. And he says, "Yeah, because this stuff didn't get here till 3 days ago." I said, "Yeah, he was going to turn 14. And the immigration officer had also been adopted into an American family from Korea. And now he's working in the American consulate in China. He looks at us, winks, smiles, and slides both passports across to us and says, "Well done, guys. Take your sons and get out of here." And so God's going to work it out. Our last little daughter has tibial hemimelia, where she doesn't have the larger bone in the bottom half of her leg. She just has the smaller one. And there's one person in the whole world that fixes that. Everybody else amputates. But this guy, Dr. Paley over in West Palm Beach, is the only guy in the whole world that fixes those. And he's 2 hours away. And he's in our medical plan. So how great is that? So we're going through that process right now. And that's all I have to say about that. So I could talk about adoption forever, but I really want to, I'd love to tell you about Uganda too. I know you'd mentioned that.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So Our Lady of the Rosary School, Uganda.com is the website. But in 2019, my sons, who were both going to Ave Maria University here, went to Uganda on a mission trip with Father Joseph, who's a PhD student here and a priest from Uganda. He's getting his PhD, and then he's going to go back and write the entire public school curriculum for Uganda from a Catholic priest's perspective. How great is that? We could probably use him here to write ours. So they went on a mission trip, came back and said, "Dad, how can we get involved? What can we help with?" And so we asked Father Joseph, and he said, "Well, I have like 8 or 9 kids living at my parents' house that are all orphans, and there's orphans living everywhere. If you guys could sponsor maybe one of these children, it's $250 a year to go to the school that the nuns run, down the road, that would be a blessing to everybody involved." So we sponsored a couple kids, and then we sell puppies, as you know. So we decided every time we sell a puppy, we would sponsor another child in Uganda. And then we started opening that up to friends and family, and we had a fundraiser. And the first fundraiser, let me mention this. The first fundraiser, the goal is $250 for an entire year to basically save a kid's life and get him a Catholic education. He gets fed, he gets clothed, he gets housed, and he gets educated in a Catholic school. So we had a fundraiser where we invited all these families and said, hey, you have to cook everything that you bring to my house for a potluck for $10 or less. And then when they got here, we showed them all the kids. We gave them little Christmas balls with beans and rice and a picture of one of the children in the Christmas ornament as a kind of a party favor. And then we said, the money that you don't spend eating at Chipotle or wherever you're going to go tonight, a family of 4, you probably can't even order off the wall and eat for less than $25. But the money that you're going to save, if you do that $20 a month deal, just by eating soup or noodles at home one night a month, you can save a kid's life. And so we did that. We got a great response, and people started sponsoring kids over and over. Some people would sponsor kids for 4 years straight that very first night. And so then word got out. There's another group of people I wasn't even involved with that Father Joseph knew. They got together and they put a lot of money together, and they built a 5-room schoolhouse that is now the orphanage and Our Lady of the Rosary School. So that's fantastic. And the prior to situation was there was a small kind of disheveled classroom that looks like an off barn on a southern plantation, maybe, that was back in the woods and neglected for years and years. And that's where Father Joseph went to school for the first 3 years of his primary. And that's still what was in operation in 2019. And the second school, the second classroom, was under the tree outside. So if it rained, they didn't get to school that day. And then nobody slept there. Everybody went home and all that. So they built the school. Immediately, the whole "if you build it, they will come." Immediately, it filled up, and then every year they've been graduating the top students into the next class and starting that grade, and then they start another grade. So they're up to 5 grades. We've got Muslim people that are seeing how the Americans are helping, and they're donating land. One guy donated 5 acres so we could grow coffee and support the orphanage ourselves. So if you check out Our Lady of the Rosary Uganda, Our Lady of the Rosary, Uganda.com.
Yep.
You can find all the information there. And the proof is in the pudding. Father Joseph just sent me the updated numbers. There's been 183 confirmations and 156 baptisms just within the population of the school. And over 40 of those are like 11 to 14-year-old Muslim children that are intentionally choosing the Catholic faith for themselves. Praise God.
Praise God. Support the good work, Our Lady of the Rosary, Uganda.com. And if you want a cute golden doodle, supercutedoodles.com. God bless you.